Welcome back to the Star Wars Newsnet Timeline Show. If you see me and Brian trying not to laugh for a minute right now, it's because we just got done discussing what Brian would look like if he was a member of like the most ESPA like biker gang, like the mods, and we just had a discussion of what Brian would look like doing a very unnecessary but altogether cool looking spin move to avoid the blaster bolt coming his way. And then shooting off his blaster into the distance. But
twirling my trench coat.
Episode 11, right? Like
That's right.
We're past in double ones, episode 11 in the Timeline Show. And it's been a minute. We were gone like a couple weeks now due to there's been storms coming your way. We're losing power. I'm getting sick. Like there's just been all sorts of nonsense going on for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, the plagues are coming upon us.
It's been brutal. But today we're going to be talking about The Quest for Planet X. It's the middle grade novel. It's the final middle grade novel of Phase 2 of the High Republic. It was written by Tessa Gratton, who, Brian, she's writing. They wrote Temptation of the Force, which I am currently making my way through right now, and it is so freaking good. And the year for this one is still 382BBY. And it was released. We're almost there. Like this is the last. Is this the last one on? No, because we have Tales of Enlightenment. Because
we have Tales. We have some Tales. We got a couple. We have a couple. Is there? Yeah, we do. We're getting there. I think we're.
We're almost there.
Yeah.
We'll be very close to out of Phase 2 and into Phase 1. Well, here in a couple of weeks, we'll actually be talking about the Young Jedi Adventures, which will be fun. Like it'll be fun to take away like a break from the books and dive into like a little bit of a little kid show. It'll be a little fun.
Get away from some of the heavier stuff.
Yeah. But 382 BBY here. This came out April 4th, 2023. High Republic Phase 2. Tessa Gratton. And you see on the cover there, you got the three like main characters of this book, which are Rupert Natani, Padawan 2, Solandra Show, which we talked about several times on this show. The last time we talked about Rupert, though, was when we were doing the Quest for the Hidden City, and it was like a Rupert Solandra team up. This one is going to be just pretty much entirely Rupert focused. And we have Das Lefbrook there. Every time I read his last name, I think of Lothbrok, and I just think of like Vikings, like Ragnar Lothbrok, even though this is kind of just like a hyperspace prospecting kid that just wants to prove that he's, is like not even close to like a space Viking at all. Yeah. and then of course we can't go 1 second without a Graf kind of causing some mischief or up to no good, or in this case, just like a little bit of fun loving no good for Sky Graf, who you see there on the end as well. Now, these three characters, really had a lot of fun in this episode. Like I had a lot of fun reading this one. It was a pretty stress-free, book for the most part, like most of these middle grade novels. I say that, but some of the Phase 1 middle grade novels get pretty intense. So I don't necessarily want to say, oh, it's just a middle grade novel, but this one was pretty fun. I think I liked this one not quite as much as Quest for the Hidden City, just because I like the dynamic between Solandra and Rupert. But I must say, I read through this one pretty quickly. Like it was pretty fun just to dive through. Just initially, what were your initial like thoughts on this one?
It was a lot of fun. I'm with you. I did like Quest for the Hidden City more than this one. It doesn't mean I didn't like this one. I did enjoy this one quite a bit. You're right. It was very stress free. It did seem a little predictable in times, for me anyway.
Right.
Just when you think everything is going fine, then, we can talk about it in a minute, but, just when you think they're getting ready to do something, then Big Brother Graf shows up and it's like, son of a, like again, like, geez. So, it was a fun little read. I like how it, even though it's one of the, the lower tiered books, it still crossed over with the Night of Sorrow, or the Night of, is that right? The Night of Sorrow? The Night of Sorrow. Going on Dalna. It had a little tiny crossover with that for just a minute. They were all there for just a hair's split and then, out of there. But I enjoyed how, even though this was a lower tiered, younger reader novel, that it still tied in with the events, going on at that time.
And it's pretty impressive how these authors have been able to write these stories so intricate that are
weaving
honestly
together, yeah.
they are very singular. Like most of these stories, you can read them and they stand on their own merits. Now,
Yeah.
Temptation of the Force and some of these books in phase 3, as we're getting further along, it's like, okay, you need to have read, what comes prior. But I'll be honest, like if I went into Temptation of the Force even and I didn't know the relationship dynamics that existed, like Tessa Gratton, Tessa Gratton makes me believe in these dynamics as if I'm reading them for the first time. So like there is something to be said for these High Republic books being able to each stand on their own merit and tell their own story while still being so interconnected with everything happening around it. And that honestly is incredibly difficult to do, because I think, in movies or TV shows, we've seen this where I think some people get frustrated because it's like, wait, I have to watch this in order to understand what I'm watching here. And when you think about all the books going on in High Republic, you would think there's like, man, I got to read how many books to understand what's going on in this book. Yeah. But if you had just picked up Quest for, Planet X for the first time and hadn't read anything, you would honestly be able to just do that just fine.
Kind of roll with it. Yeah.
It pretty much tells the story like it is, and without needing any further explanation. So let's jump right into it. We got Rupert Atani, who is Padawan to Solandra Show. She is kind of on her own right now, taking a bit of a debrief after, fighting, zombie bats in her last mission with Solandra, which if you go watch the previous episode or listen to the previous episode before, then you'll know that, they fought zombie bats on this planet with her master.
Zombie rock bats.
Yes, zombie rock bats. Let's be clear.
Or is it rock zombie bat?
I don't know. When you start getting into the inter-layer of the bat being a rock, you start losing the general public, probably, who haven't read it. But
I loved it. I loved it.
How could you not?
It's awesome.
And so we have Rupert. She is going, taking some time off, and Das is also getting ready for his father and him are these hyperspace prospectors, these people that are trying to chart new hyperspace lanes and then sell those lanes to like the bigger families like the Grafs or the Santekas or the Republic, or these people that are going to, make those lanes either private, public, basically whatever they want to do. They're like, we're just doing the dangerous job of prospecting and figuring out what is a viable lane and what's not. And then we get introduced to Sky Graf, who there's always, in every one of these freaking books, there's a graph that's up to no good. Like I swear, in every single one, there's up to a graph that's up to no good. Now, for this book, Sky is not quite like that level of conniving, but there's definitely some secrets that she's holding when we're introduced to Sky Graf, when Das tells Rupert that his friend Sky's ship is being taken over by pirates. And it turns out that she's actually stolen the ship from her brother, and those people were sent by her brother in order to get the ship back. That's basically our first introduction to Sky, and it doesn't tell us that it's her brother's ship right away, but they're this is not her ship. This is not Sky's ship.
It's dripping with context. You can you can tell. Yeah.
So first impression of Sky, go.
I liked Sky quite a bit. For those of you who are interested in it, they did a thing with Sky where she's they them, is that right?
I think Sky's she.
Is she okay? I didn't remember.
I think it's she. I think Sky is she her.
I think you're right, but anyway, that doesn't matter.
Let me check
Sure.
real quick, but I'm pretty sure we're right in that.
Okay.
We want to make sure we're right, but I'm 99% sure that we're right.
But I really like the character a lot. Very energetic. And was kind of a good, I don't want to say foil. That's not a good word to use. Was kind of I think they were a good character for Rupert to kind of bounce off of with everything that, they had gone through with Quest for the Hidden City. And because, with Solandra, didn't Solandra step away for a while? Didn't Rupert's master step away for a little bit?
Well, so she went to Jeddah. She's on her way to Jeddah.
Right. That's right. And so I thought those two paired up together were really great. The second those pirates were like, this isn't their ship, I knew it wasn't their ship. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Okay, I have to apologize. You were right. Sky
Okay.
is they them. It is they them.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I apologize on that. Like I'll
For
fix
the
that for the
for
rest of the show.
people that identify with that,
Yes.
like that's
Like,
that
yes.
there's that for you also.
So I apologize on that. We'll make sure we fix that for the rest.
No, you're
It's
good.
we're reading all these books and we got all these
They all
characters. It can be
blend
difficult
together after a while. Yeah.
to figure out who's who sometimes.
But yeah, I really liked Sky quite a bit. I liked the whole dynamic with them and the brother. And like I said, you could just tell from the get-go, like, Sky tries to get Rupert to help get rid of the thugs, right? That are trying to take the ship. And Rupert has that moment where she's looking back and forth and she's like, no, you're going to get out of here. And they leave. And even having not read the rest of the book yet, I knew Rupert had made, I don't want to say the wrong decision, but she had backed the wrong person. You know what I mean?
In her defense, I still think she made the right decision to back Sky, because she felt in that moment that, like, okay, I have to trust my friend and trust their instincts and trust Das here and trust him. But also, I think in the moment, like, ultimately she makes the right call, given the, like, are you really going to let a bunch of thugs kind of treat someone like
push
that?
Around a kid.
Yeah. Like, we're like, no, you're not. Like, the Jedi ultimately, like, even if this little teenager is up to no good, like, ultimately, like, you're not going to let, because who knows what's going to happen to that kid. So, like, I think Rupert still makes the right call. Like, Rupert still makes the right call.
And I'll say this too before we move on. Like, as a father now, it terrifies the crap out of me at the thought of my kids just like out in the galaxy doing whatever they're doing. Like, now that I'm looking back and I see these, teenage kids, preteen kids, I'm like, God, man, if my kids were out there, I'd be scared. I would be scared shitless. I would just be constantly worrying, like it's just,
Aren't you glad that we only have Earth to worry about, and your kid can't just accidentally like get on a like a ship there and suddenly they're hyperspaced halfway across the galaxy to Coruscant?
Yeah. Oh my God, it scares the crap out of me.
On a planet where like the Dringir might be just lingering around or something, something like that.
Especially in the Star Wars galaxy, which is an incredibly dangerous galaxy to live in. Like, it's like,
what is the lifespan for every, like, if you take every species in the galaxy, what do you think the average like lifespan is? Like 10 minutes? Like 10 minutes? Like,
well, it depends on where you live. Like I mean,
surely like someone's getting born and it's like they're walking out and a monster eats them in 2 seconds. Like,
oh my God, yeah, it depends on where you live. Look at how badly Obi-Wan aged over the course of like 18 years.
Bro had to live on Tatooine in the suns for a while, and like we saw Book of Boba Fett, like the first episode or whatever. Boba gets out, he's just chilling. He's working for the Tuskens in that second episode, and this giant monster just gets out of the sand, and it's like things like that exist, and I'm expected to
live. The Krayt
live.
Dragon in Mando.
Like, I'm expected to live more than 20 minutes. Like, there's no way, unless I'm like a royal prince of Naboo, just chilling on my like royal family of Naboo, just chilling and like by the lake or something. Like, there's no way. But I'm sure there's some monster in the, like, the Gungans freaking live in the water. One of those guys is throwing his little javelin at someone eventually and taking him out.
That whole aspect terrifies me as a father. But, for a book that's directed towards, a demographic of younger readers, you don't want a whole lot of adults in it, what I mean? So,
of course.
But yeah, so anyway, move on.
All that to say that the three of them are now on the ship, and the Silver Streak, I believe, is what it's called.
I think you're right, yeah.
So yes, the Silver Streak. And basically, Das and Sky, they want to recruit Rupert for their mission. Now, Das is supposed to be going with his father, with one of the Santekas, to prospect a new hyperspace lane for the hyperspace chase, which is about to begin. The hyperspace chase. And so this race, basically, the hyperspace race, is the Santekas and the Graphs, these two giant prospecting families, like the two wealthiest families maybe in the galaxy that aren't like, these cartels like the Hutts or anything. They are holding this big race where all of these like maybe smaller independent prospectors that are trying to make a name for themselves, trying to earn a living, can get together and they compete against one another to find the best hyperspace routes, the new hyperspace routes. And then they can sell them to those families for a major profit. And they'll do whatever what they do with them. And so Das and his son or his father are supposed to be going off of one of these like Santekas to go, a safer course. Not that any course is ever really safe here, but like a safer course. But Sky wants to go search for Planet X, and Das, who we met them in the previous book, him and his father their ship crashed on Planet X when they met Sunshine Dubs, who we've talked about before from like Path of the Sea, some of the comics, and he works for the Path of the Open Hand, and so they want to go search for Planet X, which no one has really been able to find. The only person that we know of that knows how to get there is Sunshine Dubs, but they're convinced that they can find a way to do that. And they are convinced they need a Jedi's help in order to do this, because they have found, like, Sky has found this, it's almost like a weird old compass. Like,
old
like
artifact,
it's like thousands of years old. And it runs kind of with the Force. Like, it needs the Force in order to really be used. And they think that using the Force and connecting it with that who's been there before, they can retrace his steps and find their way ultimately to Planet X, because the legend of Planet X is so, vast and so grand that they think, if they can find a hyperspace route to Planet X, it's fortune, like
that's
galore.
an automatic win. Yeah.
And Daz wants to go because that's where him and his father's ship is. Right. That's where it crash landed. And, the memories of like his mother are there, like these like holo recordings. Sky wants to go because that's the last known place her dad was searching for, or their dad was searching for. And they want to be able to believe that their dad is still alive, and they want to hope that he's still there for them to find and reunite with. No one else really wants to search for Planet X. They all think that it's a danger mission.
Right.
What did you think by how they cornered Rupert to try to convince Rupert to come with them, and then like this whole compass aspect, and then even just like these two wanting to search for Planet X at all?
I kind of like the idea of it, honestly. This isn't the first time we've seen compasses in canon that you had to have the Force in order for them to work. Luke Skywalker had one, that he got in Battlefront 2. You even see it in The Last Jedi. It's sitting there in his hut, and so I thought it was kind of cool to focus on the fact that those artifacts are out there, and that Rupert is really the only Jedi that they've ever really come across that they know of, that they're on a first name basis with. They're like, you're here. That's awful convenient. Come with us. Like, you have to.
We're friends. Like, you're friends with my friend.
And it's I thought the compass thing was really cool, especially considering how, and just like it would be in real life, they had no idea how to use it, even with the Force at first. They weren't even sure they were doing it right. And they're just like, why isn't this working? Is it working this way? Did we do something wrong? Like, are you doing something wrong? Like, Rupert, are you doing something wrong? Like, do you not know how to, like, and so I thought
the Force works.
But I really liked the whole prospect of it. And honestly, in Star Wars, usually the thing that I've found with some of these stories that are coming out is, you get these plot devices that are only there because the plot needs it to be there. You know what I mean? Like the dagger in Rise of Skywalker, like, okay, it just happened to tell exactly where, and
only
so
this blade tells.
Right. And so this artifact, this device actually felt natural. Like, it actually felt like it belonged there, and that, that they come across this thing and they're like, we can use this to get there. And so I loved the idea of it. I thought it was a fun it honestly felt a little bit like a Goonies story.
Okay.
A little bit. You know what I mean? Just a little bit. And I thought the compass was a great idea. I thought it was really well done also. I thought Tessa Gratton did a great job.
Only this compass
not relying on it for story, but it was there.
Only this compass tells.
Like written in ancient Sith.
It's written in ancient Sith. Rupert's like, I cannot read it. It is forbidden. Like, God. Somehow Rupert just knows ancient Sith. She's like, I picked it up. I'm not supposed to. I picked that up in the archives last week.
Oh my God.
Just another day at the archives. It did feel very High Republic-y to have like this Force magic compass that can lead us around. Very like mystical, very spiritual, something that's like missing as the Jedi, continue.
Even like, because I just got done doing another playthrough of Jedi Survivor, and there's a lot of High Republic stuff in Jedi Survivor. It felt like it went right along with some of the technology that you see in that game too, and so it felt like it flowed together very nicely.
And what also was wonderful that it's truly, and I hate to use High Republic as a verb, but it felt very like very High Republic of them to do this, because for her to even go on this mission. Like, for Rupert to even go on this mission because the Force wills it. I'm trusting in the will of the Force to just go where it leads. It's something that we see so often during this era, these Jedi just listening to the call of the Force, being willing to do or go wherever it says, you know, and not think twice about, oh, my responsibility is to stay here and wait for Solandra to pick me up. It's no, my first responsibility is to the Force and what the Force is calling me to do, which is something we totally miss later on as the Jedi are getting. It's not that it's completely gone. We see bits and pieces of it, you know, here and there, but it, for the most part, as just for the Order as a whole, is pretty much gone. And so they go on this race, and the hyperspace race begins, and it felt like the beginning of like the pod race from Phantom Menace, where everyone's just out to get each other. And Rupert has no idea about what is about to happen. And suddenly Sky goes, hold on to your seatbelts, make sure you're ready to go. This could get a little rough at first. And she's like, wait, what? And suddenly people are launching mines and launching like these lasers and probes out to try to take out other ships to get a head start. And Sky, we find out here her brother is the one that she has stolen the ship from, basically, and that they've stolen the ship from, and their brother is just absolutely. I'm sorry, I really am the worst, and like their brother is just like absolutely like hyper fixed on, I'm going to take this ship back from my sister, and follows them around like all over the place. They keep jumping, and then their brother shows up. They keep jumping, and then Sky's brother shows up. It just keeps happening and happening. And Rupert at the beginning is like, this is not what I signed up for. It reminded me a little bit of like Han Solo when Rey and Finn like have the Falcon, and he shows us, this is not how I thought today was gonna go. Like this is because like this is not what I signed up for.
Rathtar chewing on the cockpit.
This is not how I thought today was gonna go. And so you kind of got like pod race vibes from the beginning too? Yeah, I
did. I really did. I actually when it's because it's very suspenseful how they're gearing up for what everybody takes off, the way they wrote it. You could almost hear the burp, burp, burp. Like it was really cool, and it was dog eat dog. It was nobody gave a crap about anybody else. It was like you said, dropping mines. It was very high, like no pun intended, very high octane. You know what I mean? And it really had that feel to it, like it was like the rumbling, like here we go, this is something big, and here we go. And
do you think whenever one of the mines hit one of the ships or something, there's like a commentator for the race going, I don't care what universe you're from,
that's
gotta hurt. That's gotta hurt. They're side by side. And they're like,
oh.
And then at the end he's like, oh, he's catching Skycraft, like Wooga, like whatever.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, seriously, it does feel like there would be an announcer, and because that seems like something that would be on a pay-per-view channel. Like people are sitting around on the holonet, let's watch this, let's see who's gonna make it out of this alive.
It's like the pay-per-view holonet, like you're watching it like the grungy like bar, like somewhere like the deep levels of Coruscant. Like it's time to watch the space. So instead of the space race is going on, like you get your bets on who's gonna blow up or not.
I was getting ready to say
that. That's so good. So they're jumping around, and they find some members of the Path of the Open Hand, led by none other than Felix, or as we're just gonna call him, Felix. Who, very interesting character. Felix is a member of the Path of the Open Hand, and at the very beginning, he's sent on a mission by the mother to basically, it plays a larger role in the larger narrative going on at this time, where he is basically compromising the different communication buoys set up in the Outer Rim, so that way, Jeddah, the people on Dalna, like the basically, so that Republic and the Jedi have problems communicating with one another, to sabotage communications. Anyway, so they interact, and ultimately they find out that he's, sabotaging everything, and he's not supposed to be there. So he ends up a captive on the ship. But he has a very interesting, the mother. He's very devoted to the mother, but he's also extremely devoted to Marta, who he talks to. And Marta tells him about how the Jedi are going to be out to get us, and the Jedi are coming for us. And Felix is a family guy. Like, he's got a bunch of kids, and he has a big family that he wants to get back to after this. And so the dynamic between him and Rupert was very interesting throughout this book, and ultimately becomes a dynamic that we don't see in any other parts of the High Republic Phase 2. But you know, we talked about it a lot, but we'll talk about it again. The two very different ideologies of the Path and the Jedi. The Path believe that the use of the Force in any way is manipulation, and that if you use the Force here, you're taking it away from over here. Therefore, if you save a life here, you know, you're taking a life over here. That's what they believe. And the Jedi obviously are the antithesis of that. They believe that the Force flows through all things, that it is, you know, everlasting. It is like abundant. Like you cannot take away anything from the Force. So to have these two there, like obviously there's conflict initially, and Felix does not want to work with the Jedi, just like Rupert's like, how are you thinking this? Like, this is so wrong. This is like this wrong way of viewing the Force. But he's basically their prisoner, and they have to figure out what to do with him, because he's also like stuck with them for a while until they can get him back to their family. Like there's nothing else that they can do. And you throw in the fact that you got, you know, their brother, Sky's brother, jumping in, you know, trying to take him out every 5 seconds. What was your like first impressions of Felix, and then, you know, how Felix kind of integrated into the group by, he's not necessarily being combative, but they clearly don't trust each other.
Right. No, he was mentioned in an earlier novel also. Toward the very beginning of Phase 2, he was one of the characters. They had a little that Marta was taking care of. I mean, way back at the very, very beginning. And so to see this character come back into it again was kind of cool, especially at the beginning when the mother is giving the mission to him, and the book kind of touches on that history a little bit from earlier in Phase 2. And so to see him come out and, like you said, not really be combative, but come to a mutual understanding, I guess you could say, kind of the, you know, your survival means my survival kind of thing. And I like that a lot, especially throughout the book, as, you know, that distrust comes to the forefront over and over again until it gets to a point where it just can't anymore and they have to work together. Especially, you know, with the deal being made, Rupert makes the deal with him. You help us, we will make sure you get back to Dalmai to your family.
And she promises.
And so that's kind of and she makes the promise, and it's kind of that driving factor to keep them working.
And Felix doesn't really take the Jedi at their word. At first, he comes to believe their vow later, but at first he really doesn't. And the fascinating thing is he knows that they're searching. He ends up knowing they're searching for Planet X, and he believes his people are going to be at Planet X. So it's almost like, you get me back to Planet X, we find Planet X, you find my people, we do this, and we do a little exchange, everything's all good. So they're on this planet where they're finally figured out a way to make sure that Sky's brother can't track their group anymore. So they stop here to make some repairs, and Das gets like eaten by like a mushroom plant, almost kind of like this mushroom type plant.
Meat-eating mushroom.
It kind of like reminded me of like those plants from like Mario that would eat you. Like they would come out of like the little pipes.
The piranha plants?
Yeah, the piranha plant. The piranha plant almost. And it reminded me, he's like getting eaten by this.
To me, that's every Drengir. To me, like every time I read the Drengir, I think piranha plant from hell. That's all I can think of. Yeah.
And so you have the piranha plant, basically giant mushroom piranha plant, and Rupert is really afraid they're going to lose Das to this plant. But it's Felix who ultimately saves Das, like with Rupert's help. And so that's kind of like the first moment where it's like, okay, there was like a bond formed, because when they got back to the ship later after the repairs were fixed, they no longer were like tying Felix up and binding him anymore. He's kind of a part of the group, so to speak. And he is just along for the ride. And they also are kind of like, we don't really have a prison. Like, what are we going to do? Like, we kind of have to just trust him at some point and trust that the three of us can survive this. And ultimately, this quest for Planet X, we don't actually ever end up at Planet X. Like, we keep jumping to these different...
We talked about that before we started recording.
And we keep jumping to all these different planets that are familiar to Das, but they never actually reach Planet X. And there was almost some beauty in that, because they each learned to like let go of something. Like Das learned he needed to let go of his old ship, that he needs to return to his father and trust in the plans that, you know, his father has for him, but also the plans that he has, and trust in himself without, you know, he doesn't need to get that. And Sky had to learn to let their father go, and to let that happen, and to trust that, you know, the past is in the past. Like I have to continue on with my life. But they don't reach that just because they just decide to. They end up at Dalna, and they end up in the midst
They
of
all
like
do.
pirates like trying to attack them. They got to fix these communication buoys. What did you think about the whole situation when they end up finally jumping randomly like to Dalna and everything happening?
I was really glad that that book ended up tying back into into the larger narrative that was going on, because that was a huge climactic point for phase 2. That was the climactic point. I did think it was funny before they got to Dalna, though. Like they tried to use the compass one more time, and it took them back. I can't remember the name of the planet, but it took them back to the planet from Quest for the Hidden City.
Yeah,
it took them right back to that same planet, and he's like, "We've been here. What the hell?" Like,
it took him right by Gloam.
Gloam,
And then I forget the name
Gloam.
of like the planet where the attacks or whatever are from. But
it took him back to Gloam, and he's like, "We've been here," and I was just like, "This is the zombie rock bat place. I love it."
Like, I never wanted to see this planet again, and that's where Rupert's ultimately she's able to contact Salandra finally, and they have a conversation, and she learns of what happened on Jeddah. She learned that the graphs had something to do with this, so she's a little bit wary of Sky now. And but the cool thing is Solandra's like, trust the Force. She's like, trust the Force, babe. Do your thing. Like, I'll see you, back whenever we need to. Like, see you later. And so that was really cool. But yeah, so what did you think about like the Dalna experience, though?
No, it was nice, and the whole thing going on in Dalna was a very dark and graphic like battle going on down on the planet, from the adult novel, from the Del Rey novel, and from Path of Vengeance.
Right.
It was very graphic, and I mean, people dying left and right. It was hardcore. Like, it was some really, really hard stuff. And for this being a younger reader kind of tiered book, I was glad that they found a way to tie it in with all of that, but keep it lighthearted enough to not scare the crap out of kids reading it. You know what I mean? And so
the darkest of God was just them having to fend off, like, there's like pirates, and then like there's mercenaries that are attacking
grabbing
each other,
a communication buoy and fixing it and redropping it.
To help the Jedi communicate, and then Sky had a moment where they were trying to make sure their brother didn't blow him out of the sky.
Right. So it was nice to see it tie into that, and that all of these books it showed that it helped place that book on the timeline where everything was happening and everything like that. And I'm glad that that larger story got some love, even in a lower tiered book like this.
Absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. So they end up having this whole battle, and the Path of the Open Hand tell Felix that the Jedi have invaded Dalna, and then Rupert's like, that wouldn't happen. Like, that's not happening. But there's clearly this large scale battle, and they are forced to trust each other. Rupert's like, I promised you, like, I will get you home to your family. Like, I will return you to your family. And at the end of the book, after they, fix the communications buoy, and they basically put off any chance they have of going to Planet X and just fix this communications buoy, fix this, and then they end up going back to Batuu, which is where they were at first. And the Jedi Salandra was able to find Felix's family, and they were able to reunite, and we get this like beautiful little reunion between Felix and his family. And there was, I thought, I'll be honest, like this is probably a top, like, most poignant, like, touching, important moment in all of Star Wars literature. Like, even throwing it all, it was when Felix, his family, sees the Jedi sees Rupert, and is very much like, oh my gosh, like, that's a Jedi, like, we shouldn't be talking. And this is after everything that just happened with the Jedi, like a full-on like battle took place. And the Path already views the Jedi as their mortal enemies. And Felix says, no, like, this is Rupert Natani. She's our friend. The Jedi are not our enemy. Like, they are not against us. And he goes up to Rupert before they leave, and he's like, the Force will be free. Like, good luck. And she goes, may the Force be with you. And it's like this very, simple, but it was
mutual respect.
This mutual respect. Yeah. These two sides that are completely polar opposites. You could not even put them on further opposites, but they were able to come together in mutual respect, understanding, and have a love for one another and a trust for one another to move beyond that and to push forward for like a greater good and a greater goal. It was such a beautiful reminder. It was interesting that happened in the middle grade novel, which I get, like, we're trying to tell kids like these stories too of like what's right and wrong. But I'm telling you, like, adults need that as well, like to be able to read an arc like that as well, because we don't. I feel like most of the time, like I'll be honest, like with my kids and things, like for the most part, they're pretty accepting of new ideas and new people. Like, sure, there's like those are the weird kids at school, but like if you introduce a
Right.
new concept to them, it's like, okay, sure, yeah, absolutely. It's almost like younger people are a little bit more prone to just accept maybe these things. Well, as we get older, we forget some of that, and it's like we become
Right.
very entrenched. So I thought it was like a really, really wonderful way for the
Yeah.
phase 2 era to end for the middle grade
Mhm.
novels. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. There's something else too that I wanted to bring up. Also, I wasn't sure if I had it right or not. Correct me if I'm wrong. In Path of Vengeance, when they got off of Planet X, did they not escape on that ship that they were going to look for? Was that not the ship that they got on to get the one that had crashed?
I think, yeah, I think it was.
Okay, so
Mhm.
the fact that they were trying to get the Planet X to find that ship and it was on Dalna, it's kind of funny they ended up at Dalna anyway, where the
Right.
ship already was, and they didn't even realize that they were at the planet where Graf's dad's ship had been taken to. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And so I thought that was an interesting little bit also that I wanted to
So
touch
close to like
Yeah.
figuring that out, but so far at the
So
same
close.
time.
Yeah. So did the compass work or did it not work? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I know they decided to go to Dalna,
Right.
but like at the same time, like maybe that was the story, maybe that was the lesson of not to rely on this compass thing that we don't
Right.
even know what it is. Trust your gut, trust the force. It'll
Because they
get
had
you
to
where
go
you
to
need to
Dalna because
be.
it was like,
Right.
we can't go to Planet X anymore. We need to go to Dalna to help
Right.
people.
Right.
That's what it came down to.
Yeah.
So fascinating way for it to end. I love that. I love how
Yeah.
Salandra and like Rupert are like talking in the end, and Rupert has this moment where she gets to say goodbye to Das, who's gonna go be like a prospector, like work with the like Republic on these Pathfinder teams, and then Sky and their brother kind of come together and like, come to an understanding of like, all right, you can stay on the ship. We're gonna work on the ship, and Sky's like, well, it's my ship too, right? He's like, no, it's my ship. You just like exist here with me.
Right.
Like, so it was just like some fun like sibling banter there. I thought it was just a great way to tie the middle grade series up, like a nice bow on it. We have a good arc for Rupert, and obviously we see Rupert again in Tales of Light and Life. She gets a short story. She shows up in Tales of Enlightenment.
Short story. Yeah.
You get the Tales. You'll get the Tales of Light. She shows up in Tales of Enlightenment for a moment. It's
sweet.
It's a cool moment. So it's really good stuff there. Overall, I give this, like, for a middle grade novel, like a solid 8 out of 10. Like for a middle grade novel.
Same.
You agree?
Same.
Okay.
I'll agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
And we got great stuff. The last thing too, Path of the Open Hand. Last thing, Felix decided not to rejoin the Path of the Open Hand because of how extreme Marta had become later. And he said that based off his experiences with the Jedi and with Rupert and seeing what had happened, he's like, we're not going to go back to those people. We're going to do our own thing, because he wanted to avoid all that. I thought that was like an interesting way as well. But overall, solid conclusion. Any like final thoughts on this novel that you'd like to say? Like Tessa Gratton what a great addition to the team. What a great, because she came in and worked on a lot of phase 2 stuff now into phase 3. Like, great addition.
Yeah. No, this is a great story, especially considering phase 2 was, I want to say, like a full like section of books shorter than what phase 1 was. Phase 1 had like 3 main novels and 3 middle grade and 3 young adult, and this one only had 2 of each. I think they did a great job wrapping that story up with what they had to work with. And so, yeah, this one is, granted, this is one, you could pick this up and read it on its own and understand what's going on. And there's going to be a couple references to, stuff in the greater story that's going on. You're going to be like, what? But overall, 95% of this book is going to be something that you can just sit down and read anyway. And so, yeah, definitely, I'd definitely go check this one out.
Quest for the Hidden City and Quest for Planet X is a great 1-2 punch. Like, you can just read those back to back. And especially if you just want lighthearted, easy, fun reading for Star Wars, you do this. Again, that's where it pops in the timeline right after. For the most part, our timeline shows go in chronological order. Now, for instance, Tales of Enlightenment came out after all these books. We've done a show, so it came out later. So we'll go back. We'll let you know when it falls in the timeline so you can adjust accordingly. Those stories actually take place over the course of like years. There's like several years that take place in between some of those stories. So it's a little bit more unique. But
Yeah.
Coming up soon, we got Tales of Enlightenment that we're going to break down. We have Tales of Light and Life. We're going to record that. I think we're going to get together and record a few shows this week. So we're going to record the Tales of Light and Life. We're going to record another short story. We're going to get into phase 1. So everything is coming to a close here for phase 2. We only have just a little bit left here of the year 382 BBY. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel for your more timeline show, topics. I talked to Brian before. We got some fun ideas for some shows that we can drop intermittently throughout the month that we're excited to get started on. Of course, check us out every Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern time for the Star Wars Newsnet live show, which I'm on every week, along with Brian every week. As long as there's not illness or power outages going on,
internet problems,
pretty much every single week we're there. So
we at least attempt every week.
We're always trying, do or do not. There is no try. Yoda can suck it there. Like, okay, relax. Like, sorry, Grandmaster. Anyway, any final thoughts before we get out of here, Brian?
No, I'm just excited to get some of these other episodes done and get out of year 382 and get into some phase 1 stuff, because
oh my goodness,
we're gonna cook right along. It's some good stuff coming up.
Let's go. All right, that is all for this show of the Timeline Show, episode of the Timeline Show. We'll see you next time for Light and Life, everyone.
May the Force be with you.